Let us pray. Almighty God, where you have called us to govern this province, we ask your help to make decisions and laws that will be just and will promote the interest of the people. Almagtige God, ons bid dat u gedurende ons vergaderings ons die nodige wysheid sal gee en ons motiewe suiwer sal hou, en dat u ons sal help om ons tekortkominge te oorkom en al ons besluite aan u op te dra. Sikelele ilizwe letu nabantu balo umisele ukulungu kuipondo leto nikosi sikelele Afrika qina abantwana bayo kuleka inekokelo zayo yinike ukolo I Afrika. All this we beg in your holy name. Amen. You may be seated. Good afternoon, all honourable members and all guests present. Before we proceed, I would like to remind members about some logistical arrangements for today. As have been our practice to date, honourable members will participate in the sitting of the House, both from here in the chamber with the presiding officer and the table staff, and via Microsoft Teams. Our standing rules have accordingly been amended to accommodate such hybrid sittings of the Western Cape Provincial Parliament. The honourable members experiencing challenges in connecting to the sitting are requested to contact the WCPP ICT colleagues who will assist them to resolve their connectivity issues. Suppose that a member of this provincial parliament elects to participate virtually and not from the chamber. In that case, such a member's responsibility is to ensure that he or she has got good quality data connection, good quality audio and video, and that there are no disturbances where they are. Members would note that the hybrid system has been functioning well. Poor audio and or video is not attributed to the system, but rather the quality of data connectivity. Honourable members, please allow me to highlight some of the important directives in this regard. The quorum requirements for the sitting of the House are provided in the Constitution and within the standing rules. Unless there is an indication of unanimous concurrence, voting will be confined to members present in the House and on the hybrid system who are entitled to cast their votes as per the ATC that was issued on the 11th of August 2020. Members that are present in the chamber and via Microsoft Teams have all the privileges and immunities imparted by law. Members who are considered out of order by the presiding officer will have their microphones muted and called to order. The Sergeant at Arms will record members' attendance. The Sergeant at Arms and the compliance officer appointed under the relevant disaster management regulations will ensure that we comply with the health and safety requirements observed in the country. In instances where these directives do not cover a particular eventuality, the standing rules must apply. In instances where the rules cannot be applied, the ruling by the presiding officer is final. Honourable members, all microphones have been muted. However, for those honourable members participating in this sitting of the House via Microsoft Teams, you are requested to use the raise hand functionality of the system when you desire to raise a point of order, and the presiding officer will recognise you. When an honourable member in the chamber wishes to raise a point of order, such honourable member may address the presiding officer as expected, but must mute their mics when they have completed speaking. Honourable members are requested to please ensure that the mics are unmuted when the presiding officer recognises them, and when they are done speaking, to please mute their microphone. Honourable members participating in the sitting of the House via Microsoft Teams are requested not to sign into Microsoft Teams on more than one device, for example, both your laptop and your cell phone, unless the second device is utilized with earphones for language translation services, as all these actions result in a disruption of the sound during the sitting. Honourable members, please note that the media have also been granted access to this MS Teams meetings as guests of the Western Cape Provincial Parliament. However, members of the press may not use the chat room or speak or activate their cameras while the sitting is in progress. If an individual who is not a member of this House activates their mic and video camera, such an individual will be exited from the sitting immediately. I request those here today who are not members of this House to please observe the decorum of the House. For this sitting, language translation services are available in the chamber as usual and on Microsoft Teams via the respective channels. Honourable members participating in the sitting of the House must please access the language translation services via a second device, for example, your cell phone. And if you have earphones available, please use them for the language translation services. Honourable members are then also reminded that no interjections are permitted during these hybrid sittings. To this end, honourable members, I draw your attention to Rule 40 of our standing rules. Honourable members, at this point, we will proceed with the business of the day, and in terms of Rule 150, motions without notice, I recognise the Honourable Chief Whip.
Thank you very much, Honourable Deputy Presiding Officer. I give notice and move that notwithstanding the provisions of Rule 20, subsection 1, that precedence be given to the Speaker's debate. I so move.
Thank you very much, Honourable Chief Whip. Are there any objections to the motion being moved without notice? No objections. Agreed to. To the next item on the order, which is the Speaker's debate in terms of Rule 147. We will now deal with the Speaker's debate as it was printed on the order paper. But before we proceed to the Speaker's list, I recognise the Honourable Speaker.
Thank you very much, Honourable Chairperson. Honourable Chair, Honourable Premier and Honourable Members, it is indeed a great privilege and it gives me great satisfaction to use my powers under Rule 147 of the Standing Rules to identify the first topic of national and provincial interest, namely celebrating 30 years of democracy for women's development in South Africa, reflecting on the achievement and challenges to advance women's rights and empowerment for debate in the 7th Parliament. Madam Chair, may I say at the outset that I'm extremely proud to present a very competent all-female support team to the House this afternoon to guide the House through all the matters procedural. Without anticipating, Madam Chair, the contributions of members participating in the debate, I'm reminded what the first President of the Democratic South Africa, President Nelson Mandela, said in a speech made on Women's Day back in 1996. I quote, "As long as women are bound by poverty and as long as they are locked down upon, human rights will lack substance. As long as outmoded ways of thinking prevent women from making a meaningful contribution to society, progress will be slow." Close quote. Honourable Chair, I'm sure members will agree that 28 years on, this still is relevant and valid. Madam Chair, I look forward to hearing the inputs of our members and wish the House a fruitful discussion on an extremely important debate on the plight of our women. Let us celebrate the achievements of the last 30 years with regard to women's development, but also and always remain cognizant of the many challenges we face to advance women's rights and empowerment. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Honourable Speaker, for that very impactful introductory remarks. Honourable members, our Speaker's debate celebrating 30 years of democracy for women's development in South Africa, reflecting on the achievements and challenges to advance women's rights and empowerment. Honourable members, I will now call out members according to the Speaker's list provided, and I now recognise the Honourable Mbombo.
Thank you, House Chair, Speaker, Deputy Speaker, Premier, the member of the Leader of the Opposition, members in the House, And also I want to acknowledge the staff members, staff of Parliament who are also in the House. Others are listening elsewhere in the offices. Thank you for the opportunity. On August 1956, about 20,000 women of all races staged a march on the Union buildings in Pretoria to protest against the proposed amendments of the Urban Areas Act. It is these women, out of millions of women in South Africa then, that made sure those discriminatory laws are reviewed, be it to benefit not only them, but everyone, families, community, and also the perpetrators themselves. Speaker, House Chair, the significance for this background is threefold. One, it took fewer strong-willed women to dismantle the system and systemic structure that was intended to destroy families. Further, if you remember the quote, if you think you are too small to have an impact, try going to bed with a mosquito in the room. Let's talk about those women. Secondly, House Chair, women, don't underestimate your power, where you can be able to dismantle the enemy of gender equality, that is patriarchy, racism, misogyny. Thirdly, gender inequality benefits men only, whilst gender balanced institution, society benefits all, women, children, whole society, men, fighting against this evil system. It needs everyone. It's not about a fight of women versus men. House Chair, this brings me to the topic of what the Speaker has chosen, celebrating 30 years of democracy towards women's development in South Africa, reflecting on achievement and challenges to advance women's rights and empowerment. Thank you, Speaker and Deputy Speaker, for giving us this tender as women to lead this debate. Not necessarily you were saying the agenda of advancing women's rights and women's empowerment is not a men's problem, but you were saying women set the tone you want to for this 7th Parliament to advance the gender agenda. The institution of Parliament will follow suit to support you. Thank you very much. So the tone that I'm tabling is that Parliament has functions and roles to advance women's rights and empowerment. And it starts with us here to drive the gender agenda. And how we're going to be able to do that. That I'll answer later. House Chair, here I present some of the hard work that has been done by this Parliament with a focus more on the 5th and 6th Parliament, which is the 2014 and 2024. I chose only this period because I also want to take responsibility and account, if need be, as I have been part of this Parliament during this period. I analyze using the tools that this Parliament, both administratively and politically, have identified to tackle women empowerment and advancing their rights. One of those, through the debates, like the Speaker's debate, in the Women's Month, also 16 days of activism, I look at the enhancers, and then it does demonstrate that we have been on the right course. For example, the 2021 theme was about Women's Day, Dignity and Rights. The 2023 theme was about creating hope and opportunities for women and all others. And the other Parliament function is through committees for executive oversight. I didn't look in terms of the role of the committees in this regard. The Parliament role in areas of education, public education, diplomacy, engagement with civil society and other institutions for public good, I look at that. Parliament, the supreme authority, which is elected by the voters to ratify national, international conventions and treaties, the memorandums that this Parliament has signed, memorandum agreements with other partners. House Chair, but due to time constraint, I won't be able to do justice to paint a picture on all 4 points. But my focus is on public education and also Parliament's commitment within the treaties that they sign. At what extent these have been able to resolve the issues that we're talking about. Firstly, I want to applaud the Parliament team for progress in implementing some of these progressive policies, because I only have been able to do this without the help from the Speaker's office and also from the Secretary's office. Sexual harassment policy for staff, we do have that. And they made a recommendation that this needs to be extended also to the House, to the members of Parliament, and also it needs to include bullying. We need to applaud for doing that, for having that. Parental leave for parliamentarians, where the rights for parliamentarians for maternity, paternity, adoption, and surrogacy leave to ensure parliamentarians can serve their province and still be able to look after their families. The second thing, House Chair, is about public education. I'm focusing on these things because throughout all what we have been doing, it was always about senzeni na, wat het ons gedoen. Now I want to say senzani na, wat doen ons, so that we could be able to tell the people there, the anti-SARAs. In the public education space,
Honourable Member Mbombo, can I please ask you to kindly round up?
okay?
Thank you.
So in the second part of which is I'm going to talk about it in the last part is a public education where we came up with the recommendations that are related and the resolutions that we are supposed to be implementing. Now the question is, what are we doing with those? I'll come up with those proposals at the end of this debate, but this parliament has done very well when it comes to advancing the women's rights. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honourable Mbombo. I now recognize the Honourable Member Windvogel. Can we please ask that Member Windvogel be provided with a podium? Thank you very much for your service, Honourable Member Boyson.
That's how called change goes here.
Order, members. Members, can I please ask you to calm down? Honourable Member Windvogel, you may proceed.
Thank you, House Chair. Premier Leader of the Opposition, House Chair, members. Today, as we celebrate the 68th anniversary of the Women's March, we are reminded of the historic courage and resolve demonstrated by women on August 9, 1956, when they marched to the Union Building to protest against the past laws. This iconic march was not merely a demonstration, but a bold stand against an unjust system that dehumanized Black people, especially women, casting them to the margins of society, both economically and politically. It is important to remember that Women's Month should not be viewed simply as a celebratory occasion, but as a solemn reminder of the ongoing struggle for justice. The role of women in the liberation struggle extends far beyond the 1950s. Countless women sacrificed their youth and lives throughout the 1960s, 70s, 80s for the liberation of all South Africans. As we honor Women's Month, let us not forget these remarkable women, our flowers of the revolution, who fight courageously for our freedom, many of whom made the ultimate sacrifice. In commemorating their legacy, let us renew our commitment to ensuring that their sacrifices are not in vain. We must continue to advance the fight for complete emancipation of women throughout South Africa and the Western Cape. Many women are caught in a cycle of poverty, unemployment, and inequality, which limits their access to opportunities and hinders their financial independence. Unemployment disproportionately affects women, particularly Black women, African, colored, and Indian, with severe impacts on their families and communities. Despite the progress we have made, it is clear that 68 years after the historic march, true liberation remains elusive for many women. House Chairperson, Women's Month is also a time for reflection of how far we are in redressing gender injustice of the past. 3 decades ago, in 1994, we embarked on a mission to transform a deeply divided society, plagued by socioeconomic and racial disparities, where women voices were often silent and their roles marginalized. Since that defining moment, we have made notable strides. Women representation in our national parliament has increased from 27.7% in 1994 to over 43 today. Despite this remarkable progress, in the Western Cape, women representation stands at 33.3 in this August House, highlighting that there remains considerable work to be done. While the ANC has demonstrated a strong commitment by fielding 62% women in their provincial legislature representation, the DA contribution lags behind at only 24%. This figure narrates a story about a party that neglects the development and empowerment of women. It is not surprising that within the DA-led Western Cape provincial government, there exists a pervasive culture, a misogynist and toxic masculinity, where female employees are often mistreated and belittled by powerful male officials who act with impunity, sealed by a system that enables their misconduct. We call on Premier Winde and his administration to walk the talk and end the protection of those who abuse women within the Western Cape government. We demand the immediate suspension of Feral Payne and Graham Paulson while their cases are not finalized, and insist on adequate support for their victims. House Chairperson, under the ANC-led 30 years of democracy and now under the ANC-led government national unity, women hold key roles across various sectors, including the judiciary, where we have seen remarkable representation. 1/3 at the Constitutional Court, 48% of the Supreme Court of Appeal, and 40% of the High Court are women. Let us use today's debate to celebrate the historic appointment of Justice Mandisa Maya as the South Africa first female Chief Justice. Chief Justice Maya's appointment is a beacon of hope and progress, illustrating that women are not only participants but leaders in shaping our legal landscape and upholding justice. Another groundbreaking achievement we celebrate is Mia Leroux from our province, who's the new Miss South Africa and the first to come from a deaf community. She stands as a statement to the resilience and strength of women who challenge and overcomes societal expectation. Another example of courageous and inspiring women who have become torchbearers of emancipation and equality is Christian Nomdu, the first female children commissioner in the Western Cape. Her exemplary leadership is a testament to her unwavering dedication and remarkable vision for child welfare, affirming that our decision to appoint her was not only wise but profoundly impactful for the future of our children. In conclusion, Speaker, as the Women Month comes to a close, let us recognize that while we have made strides, there is still a significant journey ahead to achieve true gender equality. The struggle for women full emancipation persists as they continue to face challenges rooted in race, gender, and social class. Our commitment to this cause must be unwavering, ensuring that our efforts address these issues with the deserved urgency. Only then we can hope to reach a future where every woman is empowered and free from barriers that have historically constrained them. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Honourable Member Windvogel. I now recognize the Honourable Member Stevens.
Honourable Premier, distinguished colleagues, Honourable Speaker and House Chair. Today we stand at a significant milestone in our nation's history, celebrating 3 decades of democracy, a democracy born out of the sacrifices of many and nurtured by the collective will of our people. As we reflect on the progress we have made, it is fitting that we turn our attention to one of the most critical aspects of our democratic journey, the development, empowerment, and advancement of women in South Africa. Women in our country have faced systematic discrimination, marginalization, and violence for centuries. The legacy of apartheid compounded these injustices and relegated women, especially black women, to the lowest levels of society. But today we celebrate not only the resilience and strength of South African women, but also the remarkable progress we have made in terms of gender equality and women's empowerment. Yet we must also acknowledge the persistent challenges that continue to impede the full realization of women's rights. Achievements in women's development. Our journey towards democracy was also a journey towards gender equality. The dawn of democracy in 1994 opened new doors for women, laying the foundation for significant advances in women's rights and empowerment. Let us take a moment to reflect on these achievements. Constitutional and legislative reforms at the heart of our democratic transformation is the South African Constitution adopted in 1996, which emphasized the principles of equality, dignity, and non-discrimination. Political participation and leadership. One of the most visible signs of progress in women's empowerment is the significant increase in women's political representation. In 1994, women constituted just 27% of the National Assembly. Today, that figure has risen to nearly 50%, making South Africa one of the leading countries in the world. Challenges to advancing women's rights and empowerment. While we have made significant strides it is clear that much work remains to be done. The challenges that women face today are complex and multifaceted, requiring a comprehensive and sustained effort to overcome, like in the following: gender-based violence, economic empowerment, health and reproductive rights. Conclusion: as we celebrate 30 years of democracy, we have much to be proud of in our efforts to advance women's rights and empowerment. Thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you very much, Honourable Member Stevens. I now recognise the Honourable Member Letta Kong. You may proceed, Member. The member needs the podium, please. You are protected, member, especially today. Order, members. You may proceed, Member Letta Kong.
Thank you, House Chairperson Tatel Tuban Bolise, Kundunankulu, Premier, Usomlomo Wendlu, Usihlalo, wanamhlanje Bolise, i-members esikhoyo, nabahlali base Western Cape. Chair, 30 years into democracy as a country, we are yet to elect a woman president, despite the assurances out there that women are as equally capable as men when it comes to leadership roles, if not better. It is high time as a country we have to take initiative and walk the talk on women's standing and achievements in society. However, Chairperson, despite this unfortunate setback, we will still continue to see women occupying positions of power elsewhere, both within the private and public sector, and performing remarkably well. The recent Olympics hosted in France also bears testimony that when it matters the most, women are able to raise the South African flag and fly it high. The recent achievements by the likes of Joanne van Dijk and Diana Smith follows on the footsteps and foundation laid down by their predecessors before them, and they are all worthy celebration and embracement. On the gender-based violence and femicide, Chairperson, despite all these remarkable achievements, women continue to be on the receiving end of the horrific pandemic of GBV and femicide. On a daily basis, we hear and read about stories and accounts of women who are turned away from the police stations when they come to open assault cases at the hands of men. Stories of women and children who are butchered and killed without any signs of mercy. The recent murder of a 16-year-old Devani Nell, whose body was found in a storeroom at the Overberg High School in Caledon, where the member and the Minister of Mobility comes from. Further testimony that evil culture of femicide is now crippling into young ones, which leave a lot to be desired. On no budget for gender-based violence implementation plan, as Speaker, in conclusion, I find it said that GBV implementation plan by the Provincial Department of Social Development has not set a budget. Also find it said that 25 shelters for abused women funded by the provincial government are only found in the Cape Metro, the Central Karoo, and the West Coast, while women in the regions such as Overberg, where the Minister of Mobility comes from, Southern Cape and Cape Winelands, are left out in the cold. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Member Letta Kong. I now recognize the Honourable Member van Manen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The world has come a long way towards political equality with regards to women. Only a century ago, women across the world were routinely disenfranchised and excluded from their country's most important political institutions. Now women can vote in almost every democratic country. They represent citizens in Parliament and also sometimes lead their countries. Particular standout leaders in this regard include Angela Merkel of Germany, Jacinda Ardern in New Zealand, and Ellen Johnson Sirleaf of Liberia. But the world still has a long way to go towards full equality. Women are far outnumbered by men in national legislatures and parliaments. Internationally, 27% of parliamentarians are female, and less than 24% of cabinet ministers are female. Currently, there are only 15 countries with a woman as head of government, and at the current rate, gender parity will not be reached for another 130 years. Let us also not forget that despite the relative progressive representation of women in politics in this country, our nation has never once had a female president, and our last female deputy president finished her term of office more than 15 years ago. But women's political equality is more than participation and representation in politics. It also means that women are able to enjoy civil liberties, such as the freedom of movement, can fully participate in civil society, and have the same political power as men. And if we are to have all this, we must also have the rights that underpin these freedoms: the right to safety, to equality under the law, the right to freedom of expression and education. Sadly, many women across the world do still not have access to these rights. Even here in South Africa, we must ask ourselves whether we can really claim to have the rights enshrined in our Constitution. Too many women in our country have an issue with the right to work not working for them, not able to receive an education as this remains out of reach, and for more still, the actual right to life remains at risk, as we see with our crime figures every single week. Many of us in this very House have experienced the problem that we are discussing. When the media covers women in politics, they too often use the terms that emphasize women's traditional roles and focus on their appearance. They perpetuate stereotypes of women politicians as weak, indecisive, and emotional. They sometimes even hold women politicians accountable for their children or husbands' actions, although they rarely hold male politicians to the same standard. Just think of the number of male politicians in this country who refuse to pay maintenance, who have been convicted of domestic violence and or even rape, who are never held to account. Research by the Interparliamentary Union, an organization that seeks to represent parliaments across the world, has revealed that 4 out of 5 women parliamentarians have been subjected to psychological violence, such as bullying, intimidation, verbal abuse, or harassment. 2/3 have been targeted with sexual or sexist remarks, and more than 2 out of 5 have received threats of assault, sexual violence, or death. It goes without saying that these circumstances directly affect the number of women who choose to enter politics and to make a difference in their communities. And more than this, today's modern era has started to undo the hard-won progress of recent decades. Sexism in politics, which sadly is nothing new, yet the new digital platforms are designed exponentially to increase misogyny to the point of weakening social norms of inclusion and civil discourse. They normalize abuse and create impunity for its perpetrators who are really brought to book. My message in all of this is simple. Every one of us in this House and every one of us in this province has a part to play in what will be a years-long fight to change the way women are thought of and treated in our society. And as a member of the only major political party in South Africa to have ever been led by a woman, I know that many other parties are content to do nothing but pay lip service to the ideals of true gender equality. But today, let us commit to making Women's Month more than an empty commemoration, and let us give the women of this government the support they so much deserve. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honourable Member van Minnen. I now recognise the Honourable Member Jacobs. I don't see him in the House. Let us just check online. Honourable Member Jacobs? Not online. We will then move to the next speaker, the Honourable Member G. Murray. You may proceed.
Thank you, Chair Lady. After 30 years of democracy, we celebrate, as Honourable Wynne Vogel referred to, our first Chief Justice Lady, in South Africa. And of course, she also mentioned the achievement of Mia Leroux. Quite a remarkable achievement and an inspiration for all of us. But I also want to acknowledge the women who took part in the Paris Olympics. Hard work, dedication, and made them achieve that position. But I want to also refer to women that are less privileged in this province, who do not always get the opportunity to achieve their full potential due to generational poverty, lack of economic opportunities, and crime-ridden communities in which many women find themselves today. According to Stats SA 2021 report, the Western Cape is estimated to have 900,000 female-headed households. The children of these households share the same quality of life with their mothers, coping with rising costs of living. Would it be prudent to suggest to the Premier that he considers expanding the functions of the Children's Commissioner to include focus on female-headed households with a view to advise the Western Cape government and recommend actions to address their circumstances and their social needs? By increasing our focus on the vulnerable women, we can directly improve the quality of lives of their children. Speak on the issue of crime.
Honourable Marais, your time has
I will
expired.
conclude.
Can I please ask you to conclude?
Thank you.
Thank you.
On the issue of crime, women must have access to the sexual offences register so that they can be well informed about decisions they take. It must be granted, and we must get that mandate and get it approved from the GNU and the Minister of Justice.
Thank you very much,
I thank you
Honourable
very
Marais.
much.
Honourable members, please note this House has rules. We have time allocations that was agreed to. I am a bit lenient because of the nature of this debate, but please be mindful of your time. Thank you very much. I now recognize the Honourable Wenger, but Minister Wenger, before you proceed, just for the record, the table staff have informed me that the Honourable Jacobs did tender an apology for the sitting. Honourable Minister Wenger, you may proceed. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chairperson. As Women's Month comes to a close, we honour the legacy of the 1956 Women's March, celebrating the extraordinary contributions women make to this country and the strides we have taken towards ensuring that rights are protected. Yet this month is also a time to grieve for the many women and children who are victims of violence in our country. It's time to face squarely the relentless crisis of gender-based violence and femicide that has persisted despite the myriad efforts put in place to address it. And it is a time to ask what we can do together to end it. 1 in 5 South African women are victims of intimate partner violence. The rate of sexual offences has remained unacceptably high. Crime statistics for the 22-23 year indicate 53,498 reported sexual offences. On average, 117 rapes were committed per day last year. Women in South Africa live in the rape capital of the world and know that, statistically speaking, they have no guarantee of safety at home, at work, or in public spaces. This nightmare is experienced most acutely by the poorest South African woman. Poverty not only magnifies the likelihood of experiencing GBV, but also its destabilizing impact on the victims and their communities. These figures, even in their magnitude, cannot capture the devastating harms suffered by the victims of gender-based violence. They face battering, beatings, gunshots, trauma. Their lives are laid to waste, but they must never be forgotten or decentered. To quote the words of our former First Lady, Graça Machel, there are precious lives between these cold numbers. We must, however, acknowledge the staggering economic harms of GBVF. In a report entitled The Costly Impact of Gender-Based Violence, it's estimated that gender-based violence cost South Africa a total of 36 billion rand in 2019. It includes judicial and medical costs, lost tax revenues, and the human capital loss that occurs due to the extraordinary toll GBV takes on women's health, wellness, education, and productivity. We must remember that these costs are concentrated in our poorest and most vulnerable communities. We must each ask ourselves what part we can do in our collective response to GBVF. The Department of Health and Wellness are core collaborators with the National Prosecuting Authority and the Department of Social Development in the establishment and operation of Tutuzela Care Centres, the 10th of which was opened last week in Mitchell's Plain Hospital. Embracing a whole-of-society approach, these centres provide integrated and comprehensive social, medical, and legal support to victims. The department's role in addressing GBVF, however, is not limited to the provision of healthcare to victims. We also generate high-quality, contextually relevant crime information that is uniquely available in our health systems when victims and perpetrators present in our ECs and mortuaries. For this reason, the Violence Prevention Unit was established in 2022, collecting and harnessing information in collaborative efforts in a whole-of-government approach to drive informed and coordinated safety interventions. An example of this research undertaken at the world-class Observatory Forensic Pathology Institute, which tracks trends in homicides in real time with granular detail. On my recent visit to this facility, I was deeply concerned to learn of the exceptional rise in the rate at which women are being murdered with firearms in the Western Cape. According to their data, in 2017, 28% of femicides committed with a weapon were perpetrated using a firearm, and in 2022, this rose to 40%. This tells us that part of our efforts to address GBVF must include addressing the availability of illegal firearms and ammunition in communities. Ending GBVF remains a matter of absolute urgency. Failure to do so will condemn South African women and girls to be victimized by violence and fear. It will mean a continuation of the toll of violent crime on our health systems and harms to our communities. We must continue to embrace a whole-of-government and whole-of-society approach to put an end to this crisis. We must fight for the resources to expand our existing programs and relentlessly pursue new data-informed interventions to destroy GBVF at its roots. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honourable Minister Wenger. I now recognise the Honourable Member Christians.
Thank you, Chairwoman. I want to concentrate on the achievements of women in the Western Cape. Carrie Hoffman is Woman of the Month in the Western Cape, August 2024. Her work in the community is done through her NPO Super Troopers. Carrie and her team operate the Humanity Hub that offer a range of services to assist the homeless and marginalized. Their ethos is dignity, love, and respect, with the slogan #human before homeless. Chair Lady, Super Troopers caught the attention of Sweet Fragrance, an NPC under the leadership of Taryn Leroux. This organization recognized the work of Carrie and does in the community and awarded her Woman of the Month award. Now, Chairwoman, Sweet Fragrance was founded in 2014. Taryn assisted with this work and her team does superb work. They empower women of different walks of life, equipping mentoring on a one-on-one basis. This is the passion the team can see and is changing lives of many, many women and empowering many, many women. A story that I read about them, how they empower females and they were students of a course where they now produce children's wear, tracksuits, and formal wear. And they empower other ladies in order to change their communities. The resilience and the self-empowerment of women are breaking the poverty and unemployment in society. So, Chair Lady, The moral of the story is we have mothers and grannies transforming communities, and this is a classic example. The ACDP salutes these women who are making positive impact in communities. We will never forget that women that put their livelihoods on stake, that sacrifice so much in order to have a better generation. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Honourable Christians. I now recognise Honourable Member Herron.
Thank you, Chairperson. Chair, due to our history of slavery, colonialism and apartheid, South Africans have a well-developed understanding of prejudice and discrimination, not just applied to race, but also to language, location, culture, sexual orientation. We pretty much embrace the full gambit of hatred. Our Constitution theoretically unstitched all of these divisions, and we have made some progress. South Africans must be very careful about racist utterances these days. But besides outlawing racial discrimination, as a society we seem to have deprioritized dealing with other prejudices that continue to define us as a nation. We speak about them a lot, like we're doing today, but what are we actually doing? We, the women of South Africa, wives and mothers, working women and housewives, declare our aim of striving for the removal of all laws, regulations, conventions and customs that discriminate against us as women and that deprive us in any way of our inherent right to the advantages, responsibilities and opportunities that society offers to any one section of the population. That statement has as much currency today as when the Women's Charter was adopted. The face of poverty in our country remains unquestionably that of a black woman. The feminization of poverty is perpetuated through a labor market that is described as heavily racialized and gender biased. Men are more likely to be employed, and women in workplaces are more likely to earn 30% less than men. The incidence of family violence and gender-based violence is ever on the rise, and we have failed to create workplaces that are free of sexual and gender-based violence, harassment and discrimination. The campaign for gender equality is not achievable for as long as the solidarity of tolerance only gets broken every now and again. Real leaders of all genders must stand up every time there is a transgression, not when standing up is politically unavoidable. Sustainable development, Chairperson, cannot be achieved without gender equality. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honourable Member Herron. I now recognise the Honourable Minister Baartman.
Honourable Chairperson, one of the most powerful tools that we have in overcoming the injustice of our past is education, specifically in the fields that have been traditionally male-dominated, such as mathematics and science. We need to be urgent and deliberate in advocating and encouraging more girls to participate in these subjects. STEM education can help bridge the gender divide and provide girls and young women with opportunities to improve their socioeconomic status and increasing their earning potential. Honourable Chairperson, here in the Western Cape, the Provincial Treasury has not only reached gender parity, but we have exceeded it. I can say with pride today that as at the end of the previous financial year, that 59% of Provincial Treasury staff complement is female. And under the exemplary leadership of Provincial Treasury's first female head of department, Ms. Yulinda Kantana. This group of women are responsible for managing an 84 billion rand provincial budget. And I can confidently say that these women in finance are doing a remarkable job. Provincial Treasury is not just being led by women, but it is also actively involved in empowering women. Through the Procurement Client Centre, we are actively involved in supply development in order to broaden access to procurement opportunities for women. And we're hoping that we will continue to increase the participation of women within, especially the SMME development within the procurement space. Through the department's bursary scheme, 48 women were awarded bursaries through the external municipal bursary program to further their studies and equip them in financial governance in the 2023-24 financial year.
This is in addition to the 50 interns appointed across municipalities through the Municipal Finance Management Internship Program, who gain practical and formal training founded on the knowledge that they acquired from tertiary institutions within the financial management discipline. Furthermore, our entity, the Western Cape Gambling and Racing Board, is also playing its part in women empowerment. I had the privilege of attending a Women in Gaming event earlier this month, co-hosted by the Western Cape Gambling and Racing Board and the NPO Women in Gaming Africa. The event was a coming together of women from across the gaming sector. Women like Gail Odgers, as the head of acquisition at Sportingbet South Africa, Gail focuses on cross-platform advertising to attract new players using both traditional and digital media. She ensures that all marketing materials comply with the advertising standards set by the Western Cape Racing and Gambling Board. Women such as Tumelo Mokuna. Tumelo works as the Assistant Manager for Advocacy and Communications at the South African Responsible Gambling Foundation. Her role involves promoting responsible gambling practices through effective communication and managing related programs. Women such as Michelle Salvador, as the Audit, Risk and Compliance Manager at Cape Racing. Michelle manages the respective department, ensuring adherence to corporate governance principles, monitoring compliance with laws and regulations including FICA, POPIA and the Western Cape Gambling and Racing Act. These remarkable women demonstrate the diverse and vital roles women are playing in the gaming industry, and their combined expertise and efforts have contributed to the over 1 billion rand in taxes and revenue generated by the industry, which adds to the Western Cape Provincial Revenue Fund. The province relies on these funds for unforeseen expenses and to bolster our socio-economic programs. But in order to build the future of the provincial treasury, we need young girls to remain committed to their studies in mathematics and science. We need the next generation of innovators and leaders to be ready to become the finance head of department, the finance MEC, the CEO of major gaming companies, to be our bankers, our economists, our accountants, our auditors, and even our AI specialists. So to the young girls wondering what it takes to run an 84 billion rand budget, the answer lies in mathematics and science. That is how we build the future of the provincial treasury. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Honourable Minister Baartman. I now recognize the Honourable Member Lekker. Member Lekker, are you also waiting for the podium? You proceed. Thank you very much, Member.
House Chairperson, Honorable Chairperson, esteemed members of this House and distinguished guests. Today, as we gather to acknowledge the remarkable progress we have made in advancing women's rights over the past 30 years, we must also confront a harsh and unsettling truth: the persistent and devastating epidemic of gender-based violence and femicides that continues to plague our country and the province. It has been exactly 5 years since the 19-year-old Uyinene Mkhwetjana went to a clearance post office in Claremont, unaware that this would be the last day of her life. Tragically, she was raped and brutally murdered within those walls. Her death shocked us all and serves as a grim reminder of the violence faced by many women. We commend the Uyinene Mkhwetjana Foundation for its unwavering dedication to persevering her legacy and for its relentless efforts in combating sexual and gender-based violence and femicide. This year's theme for her commemoration, Eliminate the Fear, Prioritizing Safety and Security, encapsulates the urgent need for action. We stand in full support of this call to eradicate fear and ensure the safety and security of every woman and child. In this spirit, we call upon the provincial government not only to allocate adequate resources to address GBV and femicide, but also to provide to vital stakeholders such as the Uyinene Mkhwetjana Foundation, which plays an essential role in this fight. Their tireless work deserves our full backing and resources to strengthen their impact. The theme is also a direct response to the findings of the victims of the crime survey, which revealed that women continue to face significant threats to their safety. The report found that psychological violence and sexual offenses disproportionately affect women. With weapons frequently used in sexual violence cases, the data highlights a broader crisis of safety, with a significant proportion of women feeling unsafe even in their own household. Honorable Chairperson, as we mark this year's Women's Month, we are confronted with a growing and disturbing trend. An increasing number of women and children being reported missing, many of whom are later found deceased. This escalating crisis highlights the critical need for a comprehensive and effective response from the Western Cape Provincial Government. Our hearts and deepest condolences go out to the families who have suffered unimaginable losses. These include Musim Tetwa from Samora Machel, who was allegedly killed by her boyfriend, chopped into pieces and dumped in a deep freezer on the 31st of December 2023. Roslyn Martins, 36, was allegedly murdered by a boyfriend in her Heiderveld home on June 27 while she was pregnant. Zintle Jonase, 21, whose half-naked body was discovered in mud puddles in Kraaifontein on July 7. She had been raped and murdered. Maimuna Wolfman, 36, killed by a stray bullet in July while trying to protect her children from gangs who were fighting in the streets. Suzanne Quinn, 25, found with multiple injuries in Knysna on August 1st while pregnant. Devni Nell, 16 years old, whose body was discovered hidden in a storeroom at Overbeck High School in Caledon on August 7. On the same day, Melanie Stoffels, 26, was bludgeoned to death by an unknown assailant in Gugulethu. These heartbreaking cases highlight the urgent need for intensified efforts to increase resources to combat GBV and femicides. We reiterate our call for the provincial government to enhance its response and support measures to address this critical challenge. Honorable Chairperson, allow me to commend President Cyril Ramaphosa for the legislative reforms we have enacted as a nation under his leadership. These include the Criminal Law on Sexual Offences and Related Matters Amendment Act, the Domestic Violence Amendment Act of 2022, and the National Council on Gender-Based Violence and Femicide Act of 2024. This legislative demonstrate our dedication to protecting victims and ensuring justice for all. While these accomplishments are commendable, they are not an end in themselves. They serve as a foundation upon which we must build progress. The recent murder of Mrs. Nompumelelo Makeleni, 26, was allegedly killed by local gangs for refusing to pay protection.
My apologies, Honorable Member Lecker. Can you please take your seat? Member Kamfer, can you kindly mute yourself? Thank you very much. Order, members. My apologies, Honorable Lecker, you may proceed.
Killed by a local gangs for refusing to pay protection fee serves as a stark reminder of violence that women endure and the profound impact it has on their lives and businesses. Such incidents not only endanger lives but also undermine economic stability and perpetuate a climate of fear. We condemn with strongest terms possible cowardly killing of elderly women. This highlights the current risk faced by many female entrepreneurs, especially in informal traders in the poor working class community, which leads to provincial government's urgent attention. Empowering women economically is not merely a matter of fairness, but of economic necessity. When women thrive, communities thrive. Addressing unemployment and poverty among women requires a targeted government intervention that focuses on education, skills development, and job creation. The national government's commitment to ensuring women's full participation in the economy is commendable. By setting aside 40% of public procurement for women-owned businesses and providing financial and non-financial support through institutions like the National Empowerment Fund and Small Enterprise Finance Agency, the national government has demonstrated its dedication to creating economic opportunities for women. We call upon Premier Windi's government to follow suit and make provisions for women's economic empowerment. To truly champion equality, let us not merely speak of women's empowerment, but act with urgency, demanding that our government close the gender pay gap with decisive action, ensuring that every woman is paid fairly for the vital work she contributes. I also want to highlight the commendable work that has been done recently by Advocate Batohi when she opens the first Tutuzela Center in Mitchell's Plain. In closing, Chairperson, let us honor the legacy of the brave women who came before us and reaffirm our commitment to advancing women's rights and empowerment. Let us work together, government, civil society, and individuals to build a safer, more equitable society for all women. Let us also harness our collective strength to address the challenges we face and ensure that our commitment to gender equality is not just a slogan, but a lived reality through our experiences.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honourable Member Lecker. I now recognize the Honourable Member Johnson.
Honourable House Chairperson, as we commemorate Women's Month this month, it never fails to amaze me just how resilient and tenacious women all over the world, and certainly here in the Western Cape, can be. Women play an indispensable role in all societies. Every girl, daughter, granny, wife, and mother. We celebrate your resilience, we celebrate your strengths, and we thank you for leading our nation in the way that you do. Chairperson, South Africa has made much progress with the advancing of women's rights and empowerment, but this is still not enough. The Global Gender Gap Index is a comprehensive tool that assesses and compares gender parity across different countries. They focus on 4 key dimensions: economic participation and opportunity, educational attainment, health and survival, and political empowerment. Each year it provides valuable data that can influence policy making, drive social change, and encourage countries to adopt strategies that promote gender equality. Sub-Saharan Africa has ranked 6th with a gender parity score of 68.4%, has made notable progress in closing the gender gap since 2006. With a 5.6 percentage point improvement, South Africa now ranks 18th out of 146 countries. Despite the progress, there is still significant disparity between the best and worst performing countries. With a 22.8 percentage point gap, South Africa ranks relatively high when it comes to political empowerment and health, but our worst ranking comes with regards to economic participation and opportunity. This tracks with our unemployment rate, which is still significantly higher for women than for men. Economic opportunity is a pathway to greater independence and empowerment for everyone, and we must make sure our young girls have every opportunity to get quality education and build a successful future for themselves. There can be no excuses, and our commitment to the advancement of this cause must be ceaseless. Chairperson, women are integral to our success as a country and as a province, and it is my considered belief that it is time for men to become allies for women. It is only through a whole of society approach, where everyone is treated with fairness and access to opportunity, and especially economic opportunity, that we can close the existing inequalities between genders. Being an ally for women is a verb, it is not a noun.
It requires us to stand together with women in everything that we do. It requires us to support the move towards equality, and it requires us to speak out when we see injustice. It demands our commitment, for if we do not value the power of women in our society, we devalue our society as a whole. Honourable Chairperson, I leave you with the following quote from British actor Daniel Craig. Women are responsible for 2/3 of the work done worldwide, yet only 10% of the total income and own 1% of the property. So are we equal? Until the answer is yes, we must never stop asking. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Honourable Member Johnson, and congratulations and well done on your maiden address in this House. I now recognise the Honourable Member Mbombo. Order, members.
Thank you, House Chair. In closing, as all the speakers that have indicated, it shows that there's an urgency in terms of how we can be able to act. As I alluded earlier, that the time of Senzenina, what had Senzani has come and gone. Now we need to focus on Senzani. What are we going to do about it? In this Parliament, Chair, as you'll remember, you also one of the people who led the themes and made recommendations on placing the dignity and rights of women in the spotlight. That was from the former Deputy Speaker. The gender remuneration gap, that was led by you, Chair. The gender responsive budgeting, that was led by the MEC Batman, and the enrollment in STEM, that was led by Member Baku Force. It came with a recommendation on what needs to be done. And lastly, in this Parliament, through the Commonwealth Parliament, the Women's Parliament, we conducted gender-sensitive Parliament, our own self-assessment. We know exactly where we are, and we look in terms of these areas: equality of participation with Parliament, parliamentary infrastructure, the parliamentary culture, the gender equality policy, women's substantive representation. Without even dwelling much exactly what does it mean, we saw where we went red, we also saw where we went green. Just to make an example, one of those, the issue of the parliamentary infrastructure, where we find that people outside, out during the late hours and also coming from the parking is not safe. Those things need to be look at it now because it does impact on the safety of the women. The issue related to the gender equality policy, women's substantive representation, where we are saying that we said the Parliament should ensure that a gender lens is included in the next 5-year strategic plan. And next week, this Parliament will be conducting the strategic plan. So why are we not forming part of this? So gone are the days when we say what is the government is doing, what is the civil society is doing. The question is, what is this Parliament is doing administratively and also politically? We cannot come back on the 16 days of activism. Again, we're seeing Senzenina, yet we do know that it's our responsibility as Parliament to be able to act. Every year, we cannot be inviting women to come here and listen to their tears in terms of that, how can we be able to help them? We spent 170,000 in the previous term when we brought these women, and they're still waiting for us that when are we going to act on those? So with those words, Speaker, what I'm proposing now in regard to what are we going to do? Sakwenza ntoni now to avoid the further lip service. It means that we have to make sure that we committed that the Women's Month, it should be Women one day or Women's Day, it must be 365 days. We owe our communities. Therefore, I hereby propose an ad hoc committee related to the gender mainstreaming, because we have to, again, to monitor and evaluate. We do have the benchmark, we do have the tools, we do have the will, but the issue, we haven't put it into a perspective. Therefore, Speaker and Deputy Speaker, the tone we're bringing, it's about what is it that we need to do. so that we don't only sing and cry with those women. They are waiting for us. The Parliament has got the power related to the legislation, with the Constitution. Just like all other contemporary parliaments that is happening throughout the world, we do have the power to have an ad hoc committee related to the gender mainstreaming, institutionalization, and also take the executive into account. What the member previously, has indicated about what is going to happen related to the STEM and the young girls, that commitment here in this parliament, it needs to be taken care of. Therefore, that's why I was saying that let's make all the tools of what the parliament have. Parliament as the voice of the people. Parliament as a legislative and the constitutional element to be able to look at those things. Also, Parliament that has got the ears and the eyes, because the resolution that came from those women, 58 or 60 women that we brought and passed here, some of the recommendations, it said we need a working committee that needs to be established to look at some of those resolutions that have already happened. So in those words, Chair, what we are saying that we need to avoid the lip service, just like the women of 1956. Let's step into our power and dollar what we must. Woman, know your place. It is everywhere. It's anywhere. Come to the table and let's build the gender balanced Western Cape Parliament. Waitinda imbokodo, waitinda abafazi. Thank you, Speaker.
Thank you very much, Honourable Member Mbombo, for rounding off this all-important debate and some sound recommendations made with that. Honourable members, this concludes the Speaker's debate. As per the order of today, we will now proceed with questions to the Premier without notice in terms of Rule 204. Honourable members, there was a draw last week Friday, of which the following names were drawn to pose those questions to the Premier. In the order of the Honourable Sayed, the Honourable Petrus, the Honourable Stevens, the Honourable Boyson, the Honourable Stoffels, the Honourable Christians, and the Honourable Vessels. Honourable members, on that note, let me kindly also remind you of Rule 204, Section 9, that states a member called may put one question in a concise form and immediately after a reply thereto, two supplementary questions, which questions must relate. Let me emphasize, your follow-up questions must relate to the member's original question or to the reply provided. I then now recognize the Honourable Said.
Thank you very much, Honourable Chairperson. I would like to ask the Honourable Premier. Premier, you would be aware of the financial mismanagement and grave errors in the municipal budget under your political party's administration in the Langeberg municipality. Will you be intervening to and to also ensure that there is a sense of transparency and that people are held accountable for the sake of the residents? Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Premier. I recognise you.
Thank you very much, Speaker, and thank you very much to the Honourable Leader of the Opposition. As you said, you will be aware. Of course, we do get regular updates from the Treasury on their monitoring of the budgets of all of our municipalities, as well as the Auditor General on each of those municipalities, and of course then from that comes the interventions. So, I mean, you say you are aware, but and you make gross misconduct. I would need better detail than that, and of course, to understand what I am aware of versus actual detail from the department itself or the municipality itself.
Thank you very much, Honourable Premier. Honourable Said, your first opportunity for follow-up.
Thank you very much, Honourable Speaker. So, of course, while the Premier seemingly acts as if he is not aware, he is aware. I've got with me email correspondence from Mr. Bester, a chartered accountant in Langeberg, dated the 21st of August. MEC Simmers is laughing and smiling, the one who wants to break down coalitions, the one who is very much against
Honourable
the GNU.
Said, Honourable
He's also
order
aware.
members. Honourable Said. You have an opportunity to pose a follow-up question. You do not need to make a statement. So please pose your question, your follow-up question.
So they are all aware. MEC Bradell is also aware. So while we wait then, given the Premier's response, for the DA leadership in Langeberg to present a budget that adds up, that doesn't claim that it has more households than the rest of South Africa put together, that doesn't confuse millions and billions, and doesn't drain its reserves, the people of Langeberg must put up with collapsing infrastructure. There are many households in Langeberg today that do not have water,
take your seat.
And a massive
Honourable members.
backlog. Why
Honourable
should
Syed,
the people?
please
I'm coming
take your
to my question.
Honourable
Yes,
Syed, please take your seat. Honourable members, questions to the Premier is guided by, in terms of rules. Honourable Syed is a returning member, so that I'm not as lenient to him as I would be to the new members. Honourable members, please do not. You don't need to make an introductory statement. There's no need to grandstand. You've already posed your question. Please get to the question. Honourable Syed, I'm going to, for the second time, ask you to pose your question, and please adhere to the rules.
It's certainly a painful question for the DA's political constituency head in Langeberg. Why should the people pay the price for the DA's incompetence and arrogance? When is enough for the Premier to intervene?
Speaker, I was trying to quickly just get a copy of those mails that were sent to me, because obviously you do realize that we get thousands of mails, and then what has to happen is you've got to then put those into the process for an investigation. Just like the mails I get every single day from the ANC-run NICE in the municipality, where alongside the EFF they are running the place into the ground. I promise you, you'll see the stuff coming out of Beto municipality now. This is what happens. But of course, when you get these emails, you've got to then put them into the system. I can assure you there'll be a track of when the email arrived, who it goes to, how it gets investigated, and it will be taken from there. If the Honourable Leader of the Opposition was really serious about getting an answer on this detail, he would have given me that in a written question or in a question with notice, and I could have given him chapter and verse of date of arrival, what time, how many emails that individual has sent us, what the answers have been to that individual, how many hours it was between the arrival of the email and the actual first answer of the email, or whether he sent the email at 9:15 in the evening, and at 5 to 7 the next morning he phones to say, why haven't you answered my email yet? And then finding out that he sent it to the wrong address, etc., etc. So the Honourable Leader of the Opposition must also understand that the kind of question he asks here, if he really wants a detailed answer, he must give a bit of notice of what it is about.
Thank you very much, Honourable Order members. Honourable Nkondlo, Honourable Walters on the other side. Honourable Syed, this is your second opportunity.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. The question still has not been responded to after all of the roundabout that we have heard. But essentially, it's this roundabout that has led to the collapse of Langeberg municipality. Swellendam, where DA supporters had to actually go and disrupt yesterday the sitting. Same thing in Cape Agulhas. But Honourable Speaker, I wanted to ask the Premier, should we not all be working together to ensure stable governance in the best interest of residents by actually responding to issues such as this?
Thank you very much, Honourable Syed. Honourable Premier?
The answer is absolutely yes. And I will always be absolutely transparent. So if the Honourable Member asks me the right question, I would give him chapter and verse. Absolutely, like in every other municipality. We will do exactly that.
Thank you very much, Honourable Premier. Honourable Syed, that concludes the first question to the Premier. I now recognise the Honourable Petrus.
Thank you, Speaker. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Honourable Member. You can pose your question.
Thank you, Speaker. The question is on behalf of the PA. Can the Honourable Premier explain his main priorities for this term and where in that priorities falls the influx of illegal foreigners in the Western Cape?
Thank you very much, Honourable Petrus. So, as per the rules, you can pose one question to the Premier. The second part of your question, I'm not going to allow, and you can pose that as your first follow-up if you so wish. Honourable Premier.
I think illegal foreigners are just that, illegal foreigners.
Honourable Premier, that was the second part of the question. The first, which I've disallowed. So, Honourable Petrus, can I just ask the table staff to stop the clock? Honourable Petrus, please re-ask your question.
Can the Honourable Premier explain his main priorities for this term and where in that priorities falls the influx of illegal foreigners in the Western Cape?
Thank you very much. Honourable Premier, please answer the first part of that question because there's two questions in that one question.
Thank you very
much.
Thank you very much. And I feel like saying to the Honourable Member, I will message him the speech that I made at the opening of Parliament at the start of this term. But I won't do that, and I won't spend the 2 hours repeating that at this specific stage. But obviously, much of the focus still remains on jobs, safety, dignity, well-being, innovation, good governance. But also, as was said at that stage, is that when an election takes place, the formation of your PSP, your Provincial Strategic Plan, which has to be in place by the start of the next year and aligned to the next year's budget. That is exactly the process that is taking place at present. So, of course, the Honourable Petrus, perhaps in asking this question, had the advantage because for the first time since I've been in government, and I think it's pushed forward by the Government of National Unity at a national level, that in actual fact at the gathering which took place in Beaufort West the other day, the Leader of the Opposition and the Leader of Government Business and I had a discussion on what happens to those political parties in this House who are also part of a government alongside ourselves at a national level. And for the first time now at that space where all municipal managers and all mayors are present with us as the government, we invited the leaders of those opposition parties. And I know that it was probably a bit short notice and maybe a bit far, but I was very happy that the Honourable Petrus was the one leader that actually came to Beaufort West. And at that meeting, he had the advantage of having the draft plan of the national government, which was put on the table to all of us at that meeting. And so this comes from Minister Ramakgopa M, who's in the presidency, and it was her department. And of course, he will remember that that full plan was put on the table to all of us, and he was present. And then, of course, the provincial plan and the draft plan was put onto the table for him as well. So, I mean, it was a lengthy document. He was in the room. So that's pretty much part of what this answer should be. And then, obviously, once the PSP is finalized, it will come to this very House, as it must, and you will then start to see it aligning to the new programs that are going to be put in place. You'll see it when the Minister of Finance starts to give indications through the budget policy statement, and then, of course, you'll see how the programs start to land in the budget next year, and of course will also be spoken about in detail when we have the opening of Parliament early next year. And of course, as much as I'd like to talk about the second part of the question, I honour what you've just said, Speaker, so I won't answer that part.
Thank you very much, Honourable Premier. Honourable Petrus, you have your first opportunity for a follow-up question. If you so wish, you can pose that second part of that initial question as your first follow-up.
Thank you, Speaker.
Honourable Petrus, you may ask a follow-up question.
Okay, where in that priorities falls the influx of illegal foreigners in the Western Cape, Speaker?
Thank you very much, Honourable Petrus. Honourable Premier.
Thank you very much. You won't see it in the policy because illegal foreigners are illegal foreigners. It is not part of a provincial plan to plan for illegal foreigners. We do not do that.
Thank you very much, Honourable Premier. Honourable Petrus, you may have a second follow-up if you so wish.
No, then we must start planning as soon as possible.
So you do not have a second follow-up question?
Just a comment, Speaker.
Okay, but you can't make a comment. You must ask a question. If you don't want to use that second opportunity, that's absolutely in order. But then I will move on to the next member on the draw. Honourable Petrus.
You may continue, Speaker.
Thank you very much. I will continue. I recognise Honourable Stevens.
Honourable Premier, a new report by Statistics South Africa Gender Series Volume 11, Women Empowerment 2014 to 2024, reveals disparities in the labour market. According to the report, women in South Africa are more likely to face unemployment and are less likely to participate in the workforce compared to men. How do you address these challenges to ensure economic empowerment for women?
Thank you very much, Honourable Member. Honourable Premier.
Thank you very much. And of course, I wasn't part of the earlier debate, but I think a lot of what you've just said in the question was also part of what was addressed by so many members of this House in the earlier debate. I think when I was listening to one of the questions around, and I think it was the Honourable Lecker who was asking the question about equal pay. I mean, we can be very proud in South Africa that, in government, that is not an issue. We do not have those within government. But of course, outside of government, we know that these exist. It exists in a space of opportunity, of salary. It exists in the sporting arena of prizes. It exists across society. And we've all got to work on programs, but to make sure that we bring about change, exactly as was raised in this debate. But within the government, then you've got to say, what are those specific programs? So you will see programs within, for example, the Economic Development Department, which specifically focus on how do you, through perhaps a fund like the Booster Fund in the Economic Development Department, enable female entrepreneurs. And I think if I go to some of these Booster Fund programs, you see how these women's businesses are supported and enabled. So you've got to make sure that you are there to help bring about those kinds of changes, because it's through that kind of leadership that you start to move the whole system along and get to that parity space, which was so much part of this debate and I think the global debate on how we bring about that change. You heard it here, whether it's political representation or business or job opportunity. Of course, those are the issues that we've got to make sure we build in across all of our programs, across all of government.
Thank you very much, Honourable Premier. Honourable Member, you have 2 opportunities for follow-up. So this is your first opportunity to ask a follow-up question.
No follow-up questions.
Thank you very much, Honourable Member. I now move on to the next member, Honourable Boyson.
Thank you, Speaker. Speaker, during the Premier's opening of Parliament address, the Premier warned that the Western Cape faces significant financial headwinds. We know that many of our departments are having to cater to an ever-growing number of residents, many of whom move here in order to access better economic opportunities and higher standard of governance. With that in mind, Mr. Premier, I would like the Premier to provide us, Mr. Speaker, with a description of these challenges that the Western Cape is facing in this regard.
Thank you very much, Honourable Boyson. Honourable Premier.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much to the Honourable Boyson for that question. I think, obviously, when we were speaking at that stage, we still don't have real clarity, or we didn't have real clarity on what the actual budget amounts are that are affecting our province. But we know from last year already, when we had in-year cuts, that was the 1.1 billion rand that majorly affected, or it affects the whole of government, but the major effect happens in health and in education, because of course that's the natural where the majority of our budget is spent and our biggest constitutional mandate. And that was 1.1 billion in-year cut. It is because it was a negotiated wage agreement that was above budget, and of course we were saying that this was an illegal activity. Because in a budget process, you budget, you bring the budget to this very house then debates that budget, department by department, and then votes for that budget, and that's how you then legally start to spend that budget. In the middle of the year, we then get a cut. In the middle of that year. And that cannot be a legal process, because it didn't come through Parliament. It doesn't happen through the National Minister's budget policy statement. It doesn't happen through the national budget process either. It's in here, and you must just cover the cost. So what's the consequence? You have to cut back on whatever it is. It could be cutting back, like on schools, 21 schools cut back to 10, because it's the responsible thing to do. You've got an in-year cut. We declared a dispute, and in actual fact, we got quite a fair amount of agreement on how to manage that disputed amount and how we would get extra support. Because if you remember, at the same time, we had unbelievable disasters last year as well that cost us billions, and we hadn't received, even though we had disaster declarations, we hadn't received any funding for that either. And all of these start to eat away at your ability to, within your budget, deliver on the pre-approved plans that have been put in place and approved plans by this very Parliament. We are now faced again with a bigger dilemma. We are going into the new year, which is next year, where we already have to carry that 1.1 billion. We've now had indication that the budget cut across the province is going to be a further 7 billion across 3 departments, across 3 years. And now, on top of that, our disaster that happened last year, and then the further disasters this year, of which we must repair the road because it's washed away to go to Citrusdal, and you've got to repair it. And in this case, not once, but 3 times it gets washed away. You've got to repair it. You've got to repair it with the money that you've got, so you end up taking money away from maintenance or whatever else you're taking money away to do that job. You've also got to plan for the future. How are we going to make sure that we can deal with the 150,000 people who come to this province in our population growth every single year, and how do we deal with them in a schooling space, in a hospital space? So we've got a 7 billion rand cut. We've got a further 6 billion is what disasters have cost us last year and this year so far. And of course, the 1.1 billion. This is a massive amount of money. And so that is why we are declaring further disputes, asking for urgent meetings, looking at other options that we have at our disposal to make sure that we get just what we want, our fair share of the budget. That's all we want. We don't want anything unfair. And it's interesting because when we go to the respective MINMECs or we go to these meetings, of course, the other provinces just like us that are facing the same kinds of pressure are Gauteng and KwaZulu-Natal. And if you speak to the ministers when they go and speak at their MINMEC levels, you will find that they have exactly the same problem. And that it's the growth provinces that have a massive problem with budget. And of course, the the national problem is that in actual fact they've got to make tough choices, just like we have to make, because you've only got so much money and you've got this demand. They actually have to, in reality, start cutting from the provinces that do not have the citizens and give it to the provinces that do have the citizens that deserve that fair service that they need within our constitution and within our mandate. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honourable Premier. Honourable Boyson, unfortunately the time allotted for questions to the Premier expired, so you will not be you will not have an opportunity to ask a follow-up question. And honourable members, with that being said, that brings us to the end of questions to the Premier without notice. We move on to statements by members in terms of Rule 145. I recognise the Democratic Alliance. Honourable Said and Honourable Premier, there is a member on the floor. Order. Honourable Masipa.
Thank you, Speaker. I move that the House notes with admiration the achievements of the winners at the prestigious...
Honourable Masipa, can I just remind you, we are now dealing with statements by members in terms of Rule 145 and not with motions without notice. We're going to get to that after this. Order, members. Order. So I recognise the Democratic Alliance.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Speaker, as part of its push to render the best healthcare service in the world, the Western Cape government has now rendered more than 600 surgeries with its two hyperactive Da Vinci surgical robots. As hospital staff have steadily received more training, the Western Cape Da Vinci robots have expanded the range of surgeries of which they are capable. At present, the two robots are capable of performing urological, gynecological, colorectal, and general surgeries, including more advanced procedures such as complex reconstructive surgeries and partial nephrectomies and radical cystectomies. I could have asked you, right? Also,
Order,
Speaker,
members. Honourable Boyson,
Speaker,
please speak to me and not to your colleagues.
I'm getting training in health, don't worry, colleagues. Also, Mr.
Honourable Boyson, your time's running out. You have 2 minutes, so please continue.
Okay. Also, Mr. Speaker, by using advanced technologies, including 3D cameras and computer-assisted control systems, our surgeons are able to perform these surgeries with a far greater degree of precision, leading to greatly reduced physical trauma for patients. This not only improves patient outcomes medically, but substantially reduces recovery time and often eliminates the need for post-surgery blood transfusions and intravenous nutrition. This in turn results in more efficient use of resources and a higher turnover of hospital beds, which allows more patients to be treated in the same time frame. Once again, we see the Western Cape government's investment in cutting-edge technology.
Honourable Boyson, please conclude. Your time has expired.
The rate of surgeries completed is increasing, and we look forward to seeing this
Thank you very
investment
much, Honourable
continue
Boyson.
to pay off over time.
I recognise the African National Congress.
Nkosi Somlomo. Somlomo, as Women's Month draws to a close, it is with great concern that I highlight the pervasive misogyny and toxic masculinity entrenched within our provincial government. Female employees are being mistreated and belittled by a group of powerful male officials who operate with impunity, protected by a system that perpetuates their abuse. As women, we must put political lines aside and rally behind the interest of women. We must condemn the rulings made in this House that protect alleged perpetrators under the wording of sub judice. To illustrate this matter, I want to raise the following 3 examples. 1, The horrific allegations of sex for job scandal against the former MEC Albert Fritz was swept under a carpet. He was given a soft landing and continues to enjoy his pension at home, while the victims remain traumatized and unsupported. 2, Provincial Traffic Officer Chief Farrell Payne remains in his office while he is facing serious sexual crime charges. We reiterate calls for the Premier to immediately release the findings of his investigation. 3, the allegations of sexual harassment against Mr. Graham Polzer, the head of the Department of Local Government, dating back to 2012, highlights a grim pattern. Despite being reported to the Premier and his cabinet, the HOD remains in office. Speaker, the question is, should we be asking this? Where are the women and the victims, and who is protecting them? Last week, Social Development Standing Committee presented on GBV with only 2 females from the department presenting. The HOD absent. The MSc het geskitter in sy afwesigheid. I don't know how we will take GBV serious. The question remains, sizakwenza ntoni na maqobokazana masibhinqele phezulu sidudule esi sigulo sibi
Honourable Barnes,
sibizwa
your time has
nge-GBV.
expired.
Ndiyabulela Somlomo.
Thank you very much. I recognize the Patriotic Alliance.
Thank you, Speaker.
Honourable members,
Sexy-
there's a member on the virtual platform.
Ja. Seksuele teistering vir hoofde, Speaker, en as 'n ernstige probleem. Die PA vra dat indien daar klagtes van seksuele teistering in munisipaliteite in die Weskaap is, hierdie klagtes totaal onafhanklik ondersoek en spoedig afgehandel word. En dat sodanige lys van ondersoeke gereeld verslag van vereis word.
Thank you, Honourable Petrus. I recognize the Democratic Alliance.
Honourable Speaker, yesterday on the 27th of August 2024, voters chose to unite behind the DA once again during the Ward 17 by-election in Stellenbosch. The DA secured 96.28% of the total vote, the ANC 2.58%, MK 1.14% and ARA 0%.
Order.
Congratulations to DA Councillor Jeremy Fasse as the newly elected Ward Councillor for Ward 17, Stellenbosch, and thank you to all the residents of Cluttersville and Welgevonden for voting DA. Jeremy is the Deputy Mayor and MMC of Finance in Stellenbosch and has been a proud resident of Stellenbosch for the past 47 years. Jeremy contributed immensely towards the betterment of his community of Cluttersville and has a proven track record for serving his community as a ward committee member since 2016. We congratulate Jeremy on his successful election as well as Mayor Geesie van Deventer and a dedicated team of councillors from the DA-led Stellenbosch municipality for obtaining yet another clean audit for the 2022-23 financial year. The voters have once again put their faith in the DA and the party will repay this faith with more excellent service delivery, good governance and social upliftment for those who need it most. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Order members, thank you very much. Honourable Johnson, I recognize the EFF.
Thank you, Chairperson. Thank you, Honourable Speaker. Speaker, the EFF would like to take this opportunity to condemn the Western Cape Provincial Government over the proposal to cut teachers' posts at the Western Cape Education Department. On the 27th of August this week, the Western Cape Head of Education, Mr. Brent Walters, produced a circular which was directed to school principals, educators and staff at public schools in the province, informing them that the department's proposal to cut over 2,000 teachers' posts by the start of next year. The move seeks to start at the bottom with contract teachers and move its way up. The rationale behind the cutting of these posts is said to be the result of a reduction in the allocation of budget to the Provincial Education Department. However, Speaker, this move by the department does not come as a surprise, as earlier this year, the Premier of the Western Cape mentioned that his government will cut the budgets intended for education and health and then redirect it to these funds to the so-called safety plan. Flowing from the above, it is then safe to conclude that these latest events were well planned. Speaker.
Order members.
Flowing from the above, it is then safe to conclude that these latest events.
Honourable Member, please take your seat. Honourable Premier and the Leader of Government Business, can I remind you in terms of the rule, you'll have an opportunity to respond to any statement that is being made during this session for up to 5 minutes. So may I please ask that you allow the members on the floor to make their input. Honourable Kasima, apologies, you may continue.
Thank you, Speaker. Flowing from the above, it is safe to conclude that these latest events were well planned and well orchestrated to undermine the Department of Education at the cost of promoting the so-called safety plan, in which the Premier deemed as his brainchild a venture which has failed at its inception, to say the least. In conclusion, if the Premier and his government wants to cut posts, they should start at the management level of his government and get rid of all the people who are receiving fat checks and huge bonuses for sitting in fancy offices and doing nothing. The money that will be saved from getting rid of the rot must then be used to hire more teachers in public schools so that the teacher to learner ratio can improve. Thank you, Speaker.
Thank you very much. I've received an apology from the member of the NCC, so I'm going to move on to the African National Congress.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. Honourable Speaker, can I proceed?
You may proceed, Honourable Member.
Thank you, Speaker. Speaker, ek staan vandag op 'n dringende bekommernis om aan te spreek wat die inwoners van Citrusdal en die Sierberg betref rondom die R3, die pad wat ons verbind van Citrusdal tot die N7 en ook tot die hele provinsie. Die R303 is ook bekend as die M310 wat 'n lewenslyn is vir die gemeenskap van Citrusdal wat noodsaaklik is vir dienste, ekonomies, aktiwiteit en verbintenis met die res van die provinsie. Speaker, maar hierdie pad is ook 'n probleempad, 'n kwesbare pad vir weertoestande en word herhaaldelik deur die weertoestande verspoel. In 2023 is 'n gedeelte van hierdie pad verspoel. 2024 in Junie maand is hierdie pad weer verspoel. Die huidige herstelmetodes van hierdie pad was wel op 'n kort termyn gedoen wat reeds besig is, maar dit bied nie 'n volhoubare oplossing nie. Die finansiële impak van hierdie pad is herhaalbaar en dit is in die verstelwerk vir die gemeenskap raak ongeduldig. Gegee hierdie konteks, Speaker, stel ek voor dat 'n meer permanente oplossing gekyk word na die R303 van Citrusdal. Ek wil ook voorstel, Speaker, dat daar meer gekyk word na 'n pad wat meer vir die padverbruikers kan gebruik word, soos 'n brug byvoorbeeld. Speaker, ten laaste vra ek ook die Departement van Infrastruktuur om 'n regteware impakstudie te gaan kyk en met die relevante belangstellers in gesprekvoering te tree om te kyk na 'n brug, want dit sal 'n volhoubare oplossing vir die R303 en vir die gemeenskap wees. Ek wil ook baie graag vra dat die MEC van Infrastruktuur ook 'n geopdateerde verslag van die R303 vir ons ook moet voorhou.
Jou tyd het verstrek. Kan ek vra dat jy net afsluit?
Speaker, ons wil baie graag die finansiële kostes het van 2023, 2024 op hierdie pad. Baie dankie.
Baie dankie. I recognize the... Thank you very much, Honourable Member. I recognize the Freedom Front Plus.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. Speaker, the Freedom Front Plus notes the 2022-2023 audit outcomes report by the Auditor General, and that confirming 20 municipalities in the Western Cape achieved clean audits. Now, nationally, only 34 municipalities achieved clean audits out of a total of 257 municipalities. This is in contrast with the Western Cape improved on the previous period. The Freedom Front Plus has been in coalition with the DA in 11 municipalities during and prior to this financial period. Clean audits confirms that municipalities have complied with the MFMA and that their financial statements are free from material misstatements and no material findings on the annual performance report. Public must, however, understand that this does not necessarily prove that there were no incidences of fraud or corruption. And in the words of the Auditor General herself, I quote, "Clean audits was not necessarily an indicator of good service delivery." Ask the township dweller what they would prefer. Just clean audits or cleaner townships, clean audits or higher quality of service delivery. It's a fact that bad budgeting could result in unauthorized and fruitless expenditure, and therefore provision should be made for special circumstances to address urgent needs of communities. The Western Cape must continue to strive to improve the quality of people's lives. And clean audits are not indicators of legislative compliance and transparency, but not necessarily indicators of good service delivery. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Honourable Marais. My apologies, Honourable Members. I omitted to recognise the DA before that Honourable Member, so to the DA, my apologies.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker.
Honourable Member, I'm still on the floor. I'll recognise you now. Honourable Marais, was that a point of order?
Speaker, I just said that was in order with me.
Okay, Honourable
Humble apologies, Speaker.
Thank you very much, Honourable Member. Honourable Van Minen, you may continue. My apologies.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. As I've begun my term as a new member in this House, I've particularly enjoyed getting to know the people who make up the different facets of this government. Last week, I had the chance to chair a meeting attended by the Western Cape Commissioner for Children, Christina Nomdo. She provided thought-provoking insight into the work of her office, and in particular the work that she does to facilitate the input of children into the political system. Earlier in today's sitting, we discussed the plight of women in this country. But we also have to keep in mind that children often have even less of a voice in our society. The political system we engage in here in this House is a messy one. It relies on give and take, inputs and outputs, and compromise. But democracy relies on people, all people, having a voice. And it's up to us as public representatives to ensure that people of all ages have input into our political system. As we enter into a new era of maturing our democracy, we must make sure we allow our youth to live the values which underpin our Constitution, so that they might grow up one day to defend it themselves. And as has so often been the case, the Western Cape has led the way, but it is time for the rest of our nation to take the necessary steps to ensure the primacy of our children's voices. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Honourable Van Minen. I recognise Aljuma. I recognise the AC.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Honourable Speaker.
My apologies. Honourable Brankes, you may continue.
Thank you very much, Honourable Speaker. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Ar-Rahmanir Rahim. Maliki Yawmiddin. Iyyaka na'budu wa iyyaka nasta'in. Ihdina as-sirata al-mustaqim. صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين. Thank you very much, Honourable Speaker.
Thank you very much, Honourable Member. I recognise the ACDP.
Thank you, Speaker. Speaker, the ACDP and the Western Cape also want to put on record the shock to hear of the pending crisis coming to our province, namely the reduction of 2,407 teachers posts by January 2025. This is due to the fiscal pressure the Western Cape Education Department is facing. The WCED has only received 64% of its funding because of the wage bill. The ACDP Western Cape's major concern is the impact on schools in our townships that's already overcrowded. They are struggling, and I could not get the proper research, but still Hillcrest and all those schools does not have a 50% pass rate, and we believe that this is going to have a major impact on our learners. The ACDP in the Western Cape is calling on the Western government to take national government to task. I know you do, but we must try to resolve this, because this is going to be a massive problem when our community find out. And I know that the Western Cape Head of Department of Education is meeting with the principals, met with the principals yesterday, and tomorrow schools will receive the reduction in posts. This is going to be a major, major problem, and we've appealed to the Western Cape government to take the national government to task in order to retain those posts. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Honourable Christians. I recognise Good.
Thank you, Speaker. Speaker, the Western Cape Education Department, as we've just heard, has issued a notice to school principals indicating they will be cutting 2,407 educator posts from January 2025. The reduction in educator posts will directly affect the rights of children to basic education and will directly affect the quality of education for children in government schools. Once again, it is the poorer and less resourced schools that will feel these cuts the most, as parents will not be able to fund through school fees the appointment of additional educators. Parents in increasingly dense but middle to low income communities are already struggling to get their children into schools, with parents increasingly reporting that applications for access to schools in 2025 is being denied. The notice to principals and school governing bodies blames budget cuts, but the Western Cape Premier is on record for slashing the provincial education and health budgets in order to fund the Western Cape Safety Plan. Premier Windy proudly claimed that he slashed these budgets in 2019 by R1 billion in order to fund the learner law enforcement officers who operate as LEAP officers under the management of the City of Cape Town. The Western Cape Safety Plan and the deployment of LEAP officers in the 10 most dangerous SAPS police precincts was intended to halve the murder rate in these precincts over a 10-year period. While safety of our communities is a top priority across the country, the defunding of core provincial functions of health and education to fund the program cannot be justified, more especially since the deployment of LEAP officers has not resulted in a reduction in the murder rate. On the contrary, the murder rate has increased in these crime precincts. The Western Cape government must reassess their funding priorities. Reducing the funding of education in order to dabble in policing will have a long-lasting impact on hundreds of thousands of children, and tragically and ironically, on the reduction of crime. No child should be denied the right to quality education just because their parents cannot afford to fund a well-resourced school. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Heron. I recognise the Democratic Alliance.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. Speaker, I would like to draw the House's attention to a matter of great concern within my constituency of Matsikama. In recent years, many in our communities on the West Coast have noted an ever-increasing numbers of national government-owned buildings which have been allowed to fall into disuse and disrepair. These buildings have become what we call dead capital. They are more than just an eyesore. They represent structural risk in many cases, and some pose physical danger to any who may enter them. Examples include the derelict old police station in Klaver, as well as the former Spoornet Recreation Centre in Klaver as well. I'm more than happy to provide a full list of these buildings on request. Speaker, we know from the efforts of the Department of Cultural Affairs and Sport how important it is to use our recreational facilities to catalyse positive change in our communities. Imagine, Speaker, what could happen if our national government worked as hard as our provincial government does to leverage and maintain its facilities. We'll help you. We'll help you with it. We're there to help you. I want to implore this House and this government to put the necessary pressure on various government departments to pay attention to the state of our infrastructure, especially in our more rural communities. So often our focus stays on our cities, but we cannot afford to forget the rural communities that still make up a huge proportion of our province's people and our province's talent. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honourable Walters. Honourable members, that brings us to the end of member statements, but in terms of Rule 145(6), subsection 6, I now give one or more members of the executive an opportunity to respond to member statements for not more than 5 minutes, collectively, if they so wish. Honourable Premier.
Thank you very much. I'll go first, as short as I can. I just want to correct the Honourable Kasim and the Honourable Heron that in actual fact, and in Heron's words, we slashed the budget. It was less than 1% of the budget 5 years ago in 2019 that went to fund the safety plan, which is a comprehensive whole of government plan. So he must get his facts straight, or both of them should get their facts straight.
Thank you very much, Honourable Premier. I recognise Honourable Minister Simmers.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. In terms of the member comfort, in terms of R303, it's a pity that the Leader of the Opposition has not forwarded me who the constituency heads are for the ANC across our province. Otherwise, I would have received my statement of Saturday morning where I outlined the temporary bypass, which construction has started this week. It will take 8 days. The permanent solution is a double culvert system, but the cause of the break is actually a berm on a privately owned farm. And the cost for the permanent solution is 30 million, which includes entire resurfacing. 2023, we spent 15 million rand. Again, it's not the same area that's the problem, but the real problem here is a transversal management maintenance plan, which we have drafted, which will be sent to all relevant departments, because the real cause is not the infrastructure, it's the river cleaning itself. Thank you, Honourable Speaker.
Thank you very much, Honourable Minister. I recognise the Minister of Education, Minister Mania.
Thank you, Speaker. I want to assure the House that we are going to do everything we can to fight for our teachers here in the Western Cape. But we are in this position for one reason and one reason only, and that is national government's failure to fully fund the 2023 public sector wage bill. Now, we have imposed a massive 2.5 billion rand budget cut, but we are unfortunately left with a 3.8 billion rand budget shortfall. We have raised this matter at the Council of Education Ministers for urgent action because, honourable members, this problem is a shared problem. If anything, the budget pressures are more acute in other provinces across South Africa. And so I really hope in the coming weeks that honourable members will join us rather than fight us as we work over the coming weeks and months to fight for our teachers here in the Western Cape.
Thank you very much, Honourable Minister Mania. Honourable Ministers, are there anyone else that want to make a contribution in terms of Rule 145? If not, then that brings us to the end of members' statements. We then move on to motions without notice in terms of Rule 150, and I recognise the Chief Whip.
Honourable Speaker, I move without notice that the motion printed on the order paper in my name, reflected as motion number 5 under further business, be given precedence and moved above the line for consideration by this august House as part of our business here today. I so move.
Thank you very much, Honourable Chief Whip. Honourable members, are there any objections? No objections. Agreed to. I now recognise the Chief Whip.
Honourable Speaker, I move that the motion that the Constitution of the Western Cape Amendment Bill, determination of number of members, B7 of 2023, be considered from the stage that it reached during the 6th Parliament. I so move.
Thank you very much, Honourable Chief Whip. Honourable members, are there any objections? No objections. Agreed to. Honourable members, we now move to notices of motions in terms of Rule 151, that all notices of motion by members are required to be delivered to the Secretary for placing it on the order paper. These motions have been duly submitted and published on the order paper below the line. I now move on to where motions without notice, and I would like to inform you that in terms of Standing Rule 150, pertaining to motions without notice, condolences and congratulatory were submitted to the Programming Authority prior to this plenary on the 27th of August 2024. Members are also reminded that motions without notice pertaining to congratulatory and condolences will not be allowed in the sitting that have not been processed by the Programming Authority. I have been informed that in the Programming Authority meeting, Political parties did submit the names of honourable members in the desired order of speaking, and we had wished to move a motion without notice in the sitting of the House. I will therefore, just for noting and for the purposes of minutes, call out the honourable members' names, whose names have accordingly been submitted and approved. The following members motions have been approved by the Programming Authority as follows: Honourable D.G. Jacobs, Honourable N. Masipa, Honourable B. Stoffel, Honourable R. Windvogel, Honourable A.P. Barnes, Honourable P.Z. Lekker. Honourable members, I now put the motions duly submitted and approved by the Programming Authority to the House. Are there any objections? No objections. Agreed to. Honourable members, the motions will appear in the minutes of proceedings and in Hansard in each individual member's names as if that member has read them out aloud. I will now afford the opportunity to members to move motions without notice as per Standing Rule 150, subsection 2, subsection D. This could also include motions without notice that were not approved in the Programming Authority meeting. Members are reminded that the 30 minutes as per Standing Rule 150, subsection 2, subsection D will start now. I recognize the Honourable Litako.
Thank you, Speaker. I move without notice that the House notes a horrific incident that took place at a ShopRite situated in Gugulethu, where an elderly man was kept in a storage fridge following allegations of theft by ShopRite security guards and staff. Mr. Sandile Kinchi, who's 52 years old, was kept in a ShopRite fridge for 7 hours after being accused of stealing drilling machines. Further note that the actions of ShopRite security guards and staff are not only inhumane, but they also tarnish the dignity of an elder in a gross manner. Moreover, while the South African police services are still investigating the matter, we further call on the South African Human Rights Commission to investigate this matter and hold those involved to account. Conclude by stating that South Africa is a constitutional democratic country founded on the principles of the rule of law, wherein self-help and lawlessness can never be tolerated. I so move. Thank you, Speaker.
Thank you very much. Honourable members, are there any objections to the motion being moved without notice? No objections. Agreed to. I recognize the Honourable Kasim.
Thank you, Speaker. Speaker, I move without notice that the House notes the recent exploits by the University of Western Cape's women's soccer team for winning the regional Kosovo Cup and achieving qualification to represent South Africa at the African Champions League. The good part about these achievements is that they are taking place during Women's Month. Further note that the achievements mark the first time a university women's team had advanced to this round of the competition. These are women who had to balance the academics and the participation in sports, which also involve a lot of traveling. These ladies are testimony that women can indeed multitask and excel in all fronts. Conclude by wishing them the best of luck going forward and hoping that they will continue flying the South African flag high. I so move.
Thank you very much, Honourable Kasim. Honourable members, are there any objections to the motion being moved without notice? No objections. Agreed to. I recognize the Honourable Ngaisu. I'll get it right, I promise you.
I move without notice that the House knows that the month of August, the historic month in our national calendar, as it is the National Women's Month, in recognition of the historic role played by women in our struggle for liberation and emancipation, including the emancipation of women from patriarchal domination. Further notes the women's role in the struggle includes the massive 1956 Women's March led by formidable and courageous women, including Albertina Sisulu, Lillian Ngoyi, Helen Joseph, Sophia Dubrade, and Rahima Mosa, to mention but a few. With an overwhelming participation by working class women, acknowledges that while we celebrate the state anniversary of the iconic August 1956 Women's March towards national liberation of the historical oppressed and equal rights, regardless of race and gender, we remain deeply concerned that the working class women remain in the periphery of the economy by the alarming levels of violence against women. Calls on members of this House and society at large to ensure that gender-based violence has no space in our society and denounces the absence of a comprehensive strategy from the DA-led provincial government to tackle gender-based violence and barriers to women empowerment in the Western Cape. I so move.
Thank you very much, Honourable Member. Honourable Members, are there any objections to the motion being moved without notice? There is an objection and it will be printed on the order paper. I recognise the Honourable Gengsu. Honourable Member, your next opportunity. I've recognized you already, Honourable Member. You may continue with your next one.
That the month of July, overlapping the August 2024, marked the 103rd anniversary of the founding of the South African Communist Party as the Communist Party of South Africa. As the SSP was founded, a 3-day Congress held on 30 and 31st July and 1st August 1921 here in Cape Town. Further notes and welcomes that on the 4th August 2024, the South African Communist Party in the Western Cape, together with its alliance partners ANC, COSATU and SACO, celebrated the 103-year anniversary of unbroken struggle to advance, deepen, consolidate and defend our shared national democratic revolution, our strategic route towards socialism at the War Tambo Hall in Khayelitsha. Recognizes that the ultimate aim of the SACP is to build a communist society in which all forms of exploitation of one person by another will end and in which all products of human endeavor will be distributed according to need, and that the attainment of such a society will require an interim socialist transition in which reward will be measured by contribution, acknowledges that the SACP commits itself to a social order that will respect completely the cultural, language and religious rights of all sections of our society and the democratic rights of individuals, and calls on the House to honor the legacy of former and current leaders of the SACP who contributed in these 103 years in the struggle against capitalist exploitation, gender and national oppression of the majority people of our country. In this instance, those include Chris Zane, ZZ, Archie Smeko, Joe Slovo, Ray Alexander and Moses Scott. I so move.
Thank you very much, Honourable Member. Honourable Members, are there any objection to the motion being moved without notice? There is no objection. Honourable Members, can I please ask that the table staff just stop the clock because I want to address something? Order, members. Honourable Members. So last week in the previous sitting, I've requested assistance from the chief whips from the political parties to please guide and assist, in particular with notices without motions. Honourable Members, I've now allowed a motion that has not been agreed upon in the order of delivery. So the motion was agreed upon, but not where it was delivered. So there's a reason why there's an order, because there's only 30 minutes allocated as per the rules. So, Honourable Members, this is the last time that I'm going to allow a motion that is delivered outside of the order as agreed to by political parties. The next one that is not following the sequence will be disallowed. With that being said, I recognise Honourable Barnes.
Thank you, Speaker. Speaker, on behalf of the African National Congress, I move without notice that the House notes with deep shock and sorrow the brutal killing of a 17-year-old learner at Spamandla Secondary School in Khayelitsha. Notes further with concern reports that the victim, Olwethu Gyonta, was a significant witness in a high-profile criminal case involving a string of extortion-related murders and was gunned down just days before he was due to testify. Acknowledges that the murder of Olwethu highlights systematic vulnerabilities that need to be urgently addressed to protect witnesses who stand against criminal entities. Calls on SAPS to speed up investigation into the murder and leave no stone unturned to bring the perpetrators and mastermind to book and convey deepest condolences to family, loved ones, and classmates of the deceased. I so move.
Thank you very much, Honourable Barnes. Honourable Members, are there any objections to the motion being moved without notice? There is no objections, and motion is agreed to. I recognise Honourable Lekker.
Enkosi Somlomo, I move that the House notes with deep appreciation and welcome the intended signing of the Memorandum of Understanding between the three spheres of government and the private security industries, which will take place in Cape Town on Friday, 30th of August. Further notes that this pivotal agreement underscores the government's strong and resolute commitment to combating crime and eradicating the pervasive issue of extortion. Applauds this collaboration effort as a significant step towards enhancing public safety and improving safety of our people in communities, calls upon all parties involved to actively contribute to this crucial initiative, as it is imperative that each stakeholder diligently address not only the immediate challenges posed by crime, but also tackle the underlying factors that contribute to criminal activities, and recognizes that by working together and addressing these root causes, we can forge a more effective and comprehensive approach to safeguarding our society. I so move.
Thank you very much, Honourable Lekker. Honourable members, are there any objections to the motion being moved without notice? No objections. Motion agreed to. I now move on to Honourable Ngesu.
You get there. Molo Tudus. I move without notice that the House notes and expresses its deep concern regarding the escalating violence between rival taxi association Codeta and Kata in Atlantis. Further notes that this conflict has emerged following the recent launch of a new route by Codeta, which has led to significant unrest and allegations of unfair practices from Kata. Recognizes that this tension between rival associations poses a serious threat to public safety and transportation stability in the entire province. Urges all parties involved to exercise restraint and to immediately cease all forms of violence and intimidation, and calls on all credible committee leaders to work with all spheres of government and meet the minibus taxi task team to prioritize this matter and take immediate steps to convene the necessary discussions with both parties to resolve the current impasse through dialogue and negotiations, ensuring that all parties have the opportunity to present their concern and work towards a mutual acceptable solution. I so move.
Thank you very much, Honourable Member. Honourable members, are there any objections to the motion being moved without notice? The Minister and the member on the floor, can you take your private conversation outside? I'm on the floor at the moment, and I'm putting the motion to the House. Are there any objections to the motion being moved without notice? There is an objection, and the motion will be printed on the order paper. I move on, and I recognize the Honourable Windvogel. Windvogel, you may continue. There is an objection, and it will be printed on the order paper. We move on.
Thank you, Speaker. Speaker, I move without notice that the House notes and express grave concern over the Western Cape Education Department's reckless and ill-considered decision to reduce the number of teaching posts for 2025 by over 2,400 positions, which will have a profoundly detrimental effect on all schools, particularly those in previously disadvantaged communities, worsening the already poor quality of education in these areas. Further note that this drastic measure follows the implementation of the WCED Circular 34 of 2023, which has already caused a significant harm to under-resourced schools, as these schools have been left with large unmanageable class sizes and have struggled to cover the shortfall with substitute teachers due to financial constraints, and calls on the House to vehemently reject this decision and strongly urge the Western Cape Education Department to reconsider, and calls for a reallocation of resources from non-essential programs such as the School Evaluation Authority and the Back to School program instead of cutting teaching posts. I so move.
Thank you very much, Honourable Windvogel. Honourable members, are there any objections to the motion being moved without notice?
Objection.
There is an objection, and the motion will be printed on the order paper. I recognize the Honourable Syed.
Thank you very much, Honourable Speaker. I move without notice that the House notes and welcomes the Western Cape Education Department's current engagement with the City of Cape Town and the Methodist Church for the fixing and opening of the Govan Mbeki Road between Stock Road and Sheffield Road, as well as the service entrance road of Govan Mbeki, namely the Diaz Road, to the Klipfontein Methodist Primary School. Further notes the closure of the current road contributes immensely to the unsafe conditions facing educators and learners, and that this matter had been raised with various authorities and with ourselves at different levels, and calls for a speedy resolution on this matter. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honourable Side. Honourable members, are there any objections to the motion being moved without notice? No objections. Agreed to. I recognise the Honourable Masipa.
Honourable Speaker, I move without notice that the House notes with admiration the achievements of the winners at the prestigious South African Young Wine Show Awards 2024, notes that this event is one of the oldest wine shows in the world and celebrates its 192nd year of existence this year, notes that South African wine is world-renowned and being crowned as one of the best young wines in the country is an enormous honor for the winemakers and wine farms. Notes that the South African wine industry is a key part of the Western Cape's economy and contributes massively to both employment and tourism in the province, and that the House sent a letter of thanks to the organizers, the South African National Wine Show Association and Agri-Expo, for keeping this historic competition going, thus contributing to the Western Cape's reputation as a premier wine-producing region. I so move. Honourable
Thank
Speaker.
you very much, Honourable. Thank you, Honourable members. Honourable members, are there any objections to the motion being moved without notice? There is an objection, and the motion will be printed on the order paper. I recognise the Honourable Bryant.
Thank you, Speaker. Speaker, I move without notice that the House notes the achievement of the Western Cape municipalities in the Auditor General's Consolidated General Report on local government audit outcomes for the 2022-2023 period, and that this again demonstrates that public funds are best utilised when the needs of our residents come first. Also note that of the 34 municipalities across South Africa that received clean audits, the majority, 58.8%, were from the Western Cape. In stark contrast, municipalities outside the Western Cape continue to face challenges in delivering credible financial statements, as highlighted by the Auditor General when she said, and I quote, "Municipalities in all provinces except in the Western Cape continue to struggle with preparing credible financial statements." End quote. Notably, the municipalities consistently failing their residents in the Western Cape remain those under opposition control. And this pattern highlights the importance of electing leaders who prioritise sound financial management and service delivery. I so move.
Thank you very much, Honourable Bryant. Honourable members, are there any objections to the motion being moved without notice? There is an objection, and the motion will be printed on the order paper. I recognise the Honourable Kaiser Philander.
Thank you very much, Honourable Speaker. Honourable Speaker, I move without notice that this House notes that on the 26th of August 2024, the Provincial Minister of Social Development, Jaco Lund, joined the Oeverstrand Municipality Mayor Annelie Rabie and A21 at a human trafficking awareness event in Hermanus. This follows the joint awareness campaign held in Cape Town last month. The Oeverstrand event brought together various organizations from different sectors, such as early childhood development, NGOs, the business sector, and neighbourhood watch groups. This House further notes that the Provincial Department of Social Development worked with the South African Police Service when a bus with undocumented adults and children arrived in Paarl last month. DSD immediately stepped in to see the needs of the children to ensure they got home safely. Honourable Speaker, I so move.
Thank you very much, Honourable Member. Honourable members, are there any objection to the motion being moved without notice? No objections. Agreed to. I recognise the Honourable Bryant.
Thank you, Speaker. I move without notice that this House notes that the Western Cape Government would like to collaborate with other coastal provinces when severe storms hit, and that the Department of Local Government has a memorandum of understanding in place for cooperation with other coastal provinces, and that this House further notes that the Western Cape Government and the Department of Local Government would like to take this MOU to the next level with tangible projects and training exercises between different rescue entities in the provinces. I so move.
Thank you very much, Honourable Bryant. Honourable members, are there any objections to the motion being moved without notice? No objections. Agreed to. I recognise the Honourable Van Wyk.
Speaker, I move without notice that the House recognises the work of and the dedication of the 15 Provincial Teaching Award winners who were recognised for their work at the ceremony on Saturday. Honoured for such categories included excellence in special needs education through to excellence in technology-enhanced learning and teaching. These educators have all found ways to do more to encourage their learners into the future. The House should thank them for their dedication and wish them well for the National Teaching Awards in October. I so move.
Thank you very much, Honourable Van Wyk. Honourable members, are there any objections to the motion being moved without notice? No objections. Agreed to. I recognise the Honourable Kaiser Philander.
Thank you very much, Honourable Speaker. Speaker, I move without notice that this House notes that on the 21st of August 2024, the Standing Committee on Social Development furnished a letter to the National Minister of Justice and Constitutional Development requesting that a tax on social workers be classified as a tax on the state. That this House notes with great disappointment that this letter has been ignored by the Minister of Justice and Constitutional Development, Ms. Thembi Semelani. That this House further notes that a follow-up letter was sent to the Minister on the 28th of August 2024, urging immediate attention to this matter with a response requested by the 6th of September 2024. Speaker, I so move.
Thank you very much, Honourable Member Kaiser Philander. Honourable members, are there any objections to the motion being moved without notice? There is an objection and the motion will be printed on the order paper. Order members? Honourable members, there was an objection. We've moved on. The motion will be printed on the order paper. There's no need for debate. I recognise the Honourable Bosman.
Thank you very much, Honourable Speaker. Honourable Speaker, I move without notice that the House notes with profound sadness the passing of Professor Brian O'Connell, who was the former Rector and Vice-Chancellor of the University of the Western Cape, who served from 2001 up to 2014. Professor O'Connell guided UWC through challenging times, including financial vulnerability, staff retrenchment, and a potential merger with Peninsula Technikon. Under his leadership, UWC began a phase of significant rebuilding and transformation. Professor O'Connell also focused on UWC's role as an engaged university, emphasizing the need to address societal inequalities through teaching, research, and community engagement. I so move.
Thank you very much, Honourable Bosman. Honourable members, are there any objections to the motion being moved without notice? No objections. Agreed to. I recognise the Honourable Bosman.
Honourable Speaker, I move without notice that this House notes with deep sadness the passing of Ms. Antoinette Tony Witte, a dedicated and beloved figure within the Western Cape healthcare system. Ms. Witte was a registered nurse and a family planning consultant at the Red Cross War Memorial's Children's Hospital. She retired from her job and then went on to work for the hospital's trust. Ms. Witte remained actively involved at the hospital, serving as a crucial liaison between architects, artisans, hospital management and staff, ensuring that areas in need of restructuring or replacement were thoughtfully designed and executed. Ms. Witte's unwavering commitment to the hospital, even in her later years, exemplified her enduring dedication and the profound bond she shared with this institution. Like the hospital itself, she was a symbol of strength, resilience and continuity. This House honours her remarkable service and mourns her loss, recognising the lasting impact she has left on our healthcare system and all those who had the privilege of working alongside her. I so move.
Thank you very much, Honourable Bosman. Honourable members, are there any objections to the motion being moved without notice? No objections. Agreed to. I recognise Honourable Masipa.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. I move without notice that the House notes with sadness the passing of City of Cape Town Alderman Bonita Jacobs, knows that Ms. Jacobs was a dedicated public servant and a community activist who always fought for the people she represented, knows that she will be sorely missed and her absence keenly felt in the city's council chambers, and that the House wishes her friends and family well during this difficult time. Thank you, Speaker. I so move.
Honourable, thank you, Honourable Masipa. Honourable members, are there any objections to the motion being moved without notice? No objections. Agreed to. Honourable, recognise the Honourable Christians.
To render my speech. Thank you.
All right, honourable members. With that being said, that brings us to the end of notices without motions without notices. Honourable members, that a point of order?
Mr. Chair, Speaker, I submitted according to the timelines as requested, and I was not given an opportunity.
Please, honourable members, I don't need assistance except from the table staff, so please just allow me an opportunity. Honourable member, I have been advised by the table staff that the motion that you submitted was with notice, so it will appear on the order paper of next week. It wasn't without notice. Right. With that being said, honourable members, that concludes the business for the day. The Secretary will now end the meeting and all members will be exited from the sitting and the House is adjourned.